Hey, good evening, everyone. And thought I'd come on here, do a Friday night rant for a little bit. And I think I'm actually going to record this audio and put it out on my podcast app as well. None of my Friday night rants have I ever recorded audio for and then put it up for, Apple Podcasts and the like. But we're going to do that tonight. So let me start the recording here and we'll jump right into the Liberty Talk.
The Constitution isn't just a document. It's a blueprint for freedom. We're breaking down politics at every level, exposing government overreach, and going where the mainstream media surely won't. Join us in defending individual rights against the bureaucratic tide. You're listening to the Missouri Liberty Report.
All right, good Friday evening to everyone again. Generally, I don't record the audio version if I do a Friday night rant, and I decided tonight that I would do that just because that way, put out a little more content for the podcast side, not just the YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble side of things. And I know it's a Friday night, and we may not have as many live stream viewers just because it's the weekend, and that's fine. But I just wanted to give my 2 cents on something that, it's kind of big news right now. Of course, some of the Democrat socialists that Mom Donnie backed in New York won their primaries. And of course, the people on the right are up in arms and eh, you know, they're out there and the fear mongering is going full send. Now, I'm not saying that Democrat socialists are good. That's clearly, clearly, I'm not saying that. If you've watched this show or listened to this show for any length of time, you will know that is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Democratic socialists are the answer to what ails us in this country. Definitely not. Um, saying anything to that effect. What I am saying though is that it's really kind of funny to me. Um, the Republicans, the establishment Republicans, a lot of these so-called MAGA Republicans, again, they want to get out and they want to freak everyone out. Now, when you know maybe Republicans running in state elections or other even national elections around the country can point at this and use this as a fear tactic to try to get to get the Republican voters out there and saying like look what the left is doing, um, and kind of use that to maybe help their cause a little bit. But I'll tell you this, um, a lot of these Republicans, especially Trump and people of his ilk, they ran on no new wars. They ran on lowering inflation. They ran on cutting the budget. They ran on a lot of these fiscal and national and foreign policies that generally people get behind. If you're any sort of a freedom loving individual, and I mean, when I say freedom, I don't mean what the left would call freedom. I'm talking about actual liberty. If you're someone who really loves liberty and you want to get your freedoms back, more of your freedoms back, you want to keep more of your money, you want your property rights, all your natural rights to not be trampled on. Those things sound great. Those things sound like, yes, that's something I want to get behind. I clearly would prefer to see that over, what a lot of the others have to offer. As far as solutions to their problems or to the problems itself of the nation. The problem is the Republicans, the majority of the Republicans, the overwhelming majority of Republicans have decided that the original Republican platform is not good enough. So, and Trump and the so-called MAGA movement has captured so much of the Republican Party. We saw what Trump and AIPAC and those folks did to people who weren't the Trump MAGA type of people, and you saw them get some of those folks get primaried out, or they just left they vacated their seat, whatever. Um, but if they were to follow the actual Republican Party platform, which is supposed to be limited government, you know, fiscally conservative, more freedoms, less infringements, and that's not what we're seeing right now. And unfortunately, in New York, as we sit and watch what happens, Mamdani wins his race for mayor, and then we see some people that he backed win their primaries. Some people, there's a lot of people out there that I see like, how could this happen? It's New York, and they've had out of control government for years, and the people don't know enough. Not all of them, but the majority of them don't understand politics enough to see that every policy that the New York City government, whether it's the state or the city government, their policies, along with the spending of the federal government, has caused a lot of financial woes for the people. I mean, look at when they were flooded with all the immigrants. You saw what happened there, right? Schools would be out of session for a day while all these people came in, and they were trying to figure out what to do with them all. They proclaimed themselves to be, a haven, a sanctuary city. And then the previous mayor is like, "Oh God, we can't do this. It's financially screwing us over. We can't keep taking these immigrants in." And they start bashing Republican governors that said, "Put them on a bus and send them to the sanctuary cities like New York. They have proclaimed themselves to be this thing. Let's see it." And it financially really hurt. It really hurt New York. But instead of, and so all these policies, rent controls, things like that, instead of saying, hey, all these policies that these mayors and legislators and governors of our state have enacted are really hurting us. Instead of them seeing it that way, and then of course Republicans having control of in DC and not following along with their promises of cutting spending, no more wars, things like that. They went back on their word like they generally do in break their campaign promises, that's what they generally do. So what they did instead was they broke their promises. And so because of the failures of New York politicians, the failures of the federal government, between all the inflation and everything else, and these Democrat socialists come out of the woodwork. Mamdani wins his race. Now, he's a very energetic guy. He was really upbeat with his message. He was a good, not that his message is factual. The things he says, not that they're factual, but he said he was good enough to keep fooling the people of New York into believing that his policies would fix things. So he just won a thing where they put a freeze on rate hikes, or I'm sorry, rent increases. They put a freeze on any rent increases, and it's across all these sectors. So and the people are cheering that they did something good. Now, here's the thing, though the effects of that are not immediate, right? It takes a while to see the effects of having rent increase freezes and things like that. The impacts is just like inflation from the CARES Act. That wasn't immediately felt. That'll take a year. It might take several months, a year, 2 years before the full effects of a policy is really felt. So the same thing that it'll be just like that in New York, right? They'll start feeling those effects, and they'll be like, "Oh God," you know. But the thing is, will they blame it on the policies and the policy makers, or will they fall into the trap of, "Oh, it's these wealthy people again," because that's our go-to, or that's their go-to, right? Their go-to is these greedy billionaires are screwing everything up. And so we have that in New York City. Republicans are failing. Their message is failing. They're not following through on their campaign promises. And the left has been doing what it's been doing, and they have been failing in their campaign promises, their empty slogans, right? So what do we get? We get even farther to the left, a more extreme kick to the outer fringes of the Democrat Party. And, it's one of those things where it's like they just had to bide their time, wait for the right circumstances, and then depend on the ignorance of the people to not understand how policy has shaped the economic landscape of the city that they're living in. And they just have to work on their emotions and feel goodisms and all this stuff in order to get themselves elected. And so it's a mixture. If we're going to talk about blame, we can't just point at Republicans and we can't just point at Democrats, because if the people don't understand how economic policies work, like rent hike freezes, or spending yourselves into trillions of dollars of debt and having to print more money to to get these programs and keep these programs afloat, or um, you shut down the economy over a virus or any of these things, and you pump $6 trillion at one time into the economy and cause inflation, and then you impose tariffs on goods and you do all these things. And then as you watch politicians say, well, the inflation's caused by companies charging too high of prices, or before when the CARES Act was signed, or the CARES Act was being written and proposed and going to go for a vote, these so-called economists said that inflation is transitory. It will have nothing to do with the or the trillions of dollars that they would spend, that would pump into the economy, right? None of that had that the inflation has nothing to do with government spending. It's the wealthy, it's something. It's not their fault, because they're just out doing what they think is right for the people of the state or the country. So we see these things happen. We see government intervention into almost every facet of our lives. Things don't get better, they get worse. And a new group of people come in with their promises. They find a boogeyman. It's not the government. It's the wealthy, right? It's always the wealthy. And they say, "Well, we'll make the wealthy pay their fair share. And while we do that, we'll freeze rent increases. We'll create city-run grocery stores." He promised free buses, free this, free that. We'll offer you all the handouts that your little hearts can desire, and we'll go after the wealthy. And that was their solution. And, you know, at this point in time, there's other people that have said this as well, and I tend to agree with them. Let the socialists win in states like California and New York. Watch everything unfold, watch it fall on its face, watch it not work, see the actual outcome of the policies, not the intent, and use this as a lesson as we educate the public. Bring the receipts. Say, hey, here's what he said this was going to happen. He did these things. Now look at your city. Look at this. Look at that. Oh, wait. What do you mean no one's buying properties to renovate them after the rent freeze, the rent increase freezes? Oh, what? No one's investing in the buildings anymore to fix them up? Huh. Probably because they can't recoup the million, $2 million, or how much it would cost them to renovate those buildings. Gee. Now, the places aren't being fixed up like they would, things like this. And they won't, but we have to somehow get our messaging right to say this doesn't stem from a bunch of greedy landlords. This stems from the fact that you choke off their ability if they have to renovate a building and they have to borrow money to renovate that building, and then they can't recoup enough money to pay off that money. Why would they do that? Why would they take the loss? I've even heard people say that if there's uh, a rent hike freeze, right? You can't raise the rent on anybody, and somebody wants to borrow money to renovate a building and improve it, and then the bank knows they can't charge an increased amount of rent to recoup it, they won't give you the loan. They won't get the loan to renovate it. So they're going to choke off and I don't know how long this goes on. This goes on for a few years. I'm not sure. I think it's at least 2 years. We have to wait it out and see the effects. Now, most of the media is not going to report on this. So you'll have to find the people that will actually dig in and find how these policies affect the actual effect of these policies, right? That's what we have to wait for. And so if California wants to impose a fee on wealthy people for leaving the state, and they decide to anyway, and they keep losing big businesses to other states, and they drop a financial nuclear bomb on their state, and they keep going further and further into debt and boo-hoo and crying and blaming it on the wealthy. Well, at some point, someone other than the wealthy is going to have to take accountability for all this. And so these are the things we have to use to educate others to say, this is not the way. Taking money from one group of people and handing it to another is not the way to fix things. The only true fix is to get government regulation and control out of the people's way, right? We have to somehow get to a point where we understand and have other people understand that generally government is the problem. I mean, it's just all there is to it. Government generally is the problem here. And, I mean, you're like, again, everything that we've seen so far, there are people out there that are preaching the message like, hey, let's take a look at this. Who's at who's actually at fault here for the things that are going on? And there's not enough. So I want to see what unfolds. Let these people win, and we watch this unfold. And we sit back with our popcorn and we watch the show. And then when it's all done and we look at the results, we have something to show. We have something to show people. Hey, this is the actual result. This is the actual outcome of these type of policies enacted by people who are economically illiterate, whose policies are based on not real world facts. They're based in like something out of the Twilight Zone. Um, and nothing good has ever come from these things. We don't have a bunch of people with financial prosperity. What we have is we create a population of parasites. And I know that's gonna well, geez, John, why are you calling people parasites? If you create a group of people who are wholly or mostly dependent on the government, and that government body, through the use of force, is going to steal, in this case, money or maybe property or whatever, from one group of people to feed another group of people to keep them happy, they think they're getting something great. And these policies will stand the test of time. You are creating a parasitic environment. You are creating a group of people dependent on the host, which are business owners and people who own big companies or whatever. Then two things can happen. You can kill the host off, which means all the money and stuff is gone, the business is closed, whatever, or the host plucks the parasites off and they move away from the parasites. And then the people that were feasting on the host are now upset because the host has left. And they don't understand when you get possibly hundreds of thousands or millions of people dependent on other people's money, things don't work out well generally. They're going to up and leave. So yes, these governments, these democratic socialists, are creating a parasitic environment. Hell, the government itself is a parasitic uh, being. Government, a government the size that we have now, the biggest government ever in the history of the planet, cannot survive without all of us, which are the hosts, feeding off of us and then giving a lot of our hard earned money to a smaller select group of people. And instead of having healthy people, you've created a dependent people who are wholly uneducated on how things actually operate. And they can't they either you basically you don't incentivize those people to get off the government teat, if you will. And then as you have more of this deficit spending and stealing more money from a larger group of people, and those people are financially hurt, and you promise them programs to hurt. And so the amount of money you steal works its way up the food chain to the people at the top. But again, they've never explained to any of us what happens when they run out of other people's money. They just create a larger and larger and larger group of dependent people. And it's an awful thing to witness. But I want to sit here and I'm going to watch what happens in New York City. And if California goes this way too, we'll watch if they keep doing what they've been doing and trying to leech off the wealthy, and the wealthy leave, and then there's no host there to feed off of it anymore. So then they have to try to figure out what they're going to do next. We have to watch this and we have to use all these examples. We've had examples of communist tyrants in Russia and China and these other countries. And, it's like, because, people like Stalin killed tens of millions of people. But because he also fought against Adolf Hitler in World War II, in this country, even in the history books, he is not given the slap that he absolutely deserves for what he did to the people of that country. Stalin deserves way worse treatment in the history books than what he got. And when you don't have that, you're like, well, he helped us defeat Adolf Hitler in World War II. Yeah, he also killed millions of his own people. Yeah, well, and there's no yeah, well. If we're going to give people like him a pass in the history books and the people in coming generations don't understand what his policies did to the people of that country, they will vote for people not exactly like Stalin, but they'll vote for policies like that, thinking, not understanding the outcome, that you are stealing from a certain group of people, giving it to another group of people, choking things out financially, controlling every single aspect of their life. And they won't even know to expect it because we give history books have given way too much praise to Joseph Stalin. So that's one thing that we really have to be on guard for. Now, I may have to put on my glasses to read this, but I want to Jess Piper, bless her heart. She's special. Let me read this post that she's got here. Um this was on put on Facebook 12 hours ago. It says, "Don't threaten me with a good time." By Jess Piper. Can Jess Piper even have a good time without just being an unbearable winch? I don't know that she can have an actually I don't know if she can actually be a pleasant person to be around or not, but I digress. She says, I've written about progressives winning in political races across the country, and it excites me. I think we are seeing the future of the Democratic Party evolving before our eyes. And I'm watching with bated breath as candidates with big ideas and no apologies for these ideas keep winning. Guess what they also won't have? They won't have any apologies for when their ideas fail. I'm also watching this play out across the country while in a state with a near authoritarian type legislature. Missouri has been under the boot of a GOP supermajority for over 2 decades, and I do mean under their boot. They are suffocating us. I know what it's like to vote and have my voice silenced by my own representatives. I know what it's like to have my life threatened under a cruel abortion ban. I know what it's like to send my kids to defunded schools. I know what it's like to lose my health insurance and my access to health care. I know what it's like to watch my paved roads and my sidewalks degrade to rubble. I know what it's like to watch my state slip from a common sense democracy to a theocratic authoritarianism. I also know that paternalism is a major factor in Missouri. Our state officials act as if they know better what we need than we do. And they are wrong. Our reps consistently overturn the will of Missouri voters and, in essence, pat us on the head when we present a new amendment or proposition and then do whatever they want, or rather, what their donors want. As I write this, Missouri Republicans are trying to eliminate our citizen led petition process. The only way Missourians have been able to fight back against the overreach of the GOP. We collect signatures to put a measure on the ballot, and when we collect enough, the measure will be voted on by the people. This initiative petition process is the only way we will able to expand Medicaid and overturn an abortion ban and raise the minimum wage and fight right to work and legalize marijuana. Our lawmakers refused us on each measure, and we did it anyway at the ballot, which is why Republicans are hell bent to eliminate our process and our voices. Now, I'm going to pause right there for a moment because Jess Piper loves to get on Facebook. And anytime you talk about taking money and sending it to private schools, she loves to get on and say how unconstitutional that is. But, she's also really cool with expanding Medicaid. Let me get down. Expand Medicaid, overturn an abortion ban, raise the minimum wage, fight right to work, legalize marijuana. Like the marijuana thing hit the Constitution. I don't know if Jess Piper knows this or not, but the Constitution It's supposed to limit the government and not the people. And then she celebrates this on one hand and also wants to proclaim how unconstitutional something else a lobbyist organization is trying to do. So she can't even be consistent. And folks, when I get on here and I talk about when I talk about Republicans or Democrats or whichever political party, whichever of those two, the one thing that I ask for these people is a little bit of consistency. And man, is that hard to do. And so what she's saying is she's trying to say that they're trying to take away um, the initiative petition process from the people. That's not necessarily true. The problem is the initial problem is it's too easy to amend the Constitution of Missouri for abortion to be put into the Constitution. So it's okay to kill a baby, but the beginning of the Constitution says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and the enjoyment of one's gains. So life is the first thing in the Constitution, and they say, ah, in the back of it, in the end of the Constitution, we'll put that you can kill a kid in the womb. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then, there's other things in there like bingo, things like that. And she's not upset about any of that. Okay, let me get back to my point though, right? So she's saying what they're trying to do is end the people's ability to initiate a petition. Now, I don't have much sympathy for her in this if you know I don't know, that's a horrible way to do it. Anyway, I don't know why she's saying this, and here's the thing. Like the recreational marijuana was put into the Constitution, and 16 total counties out of all the counties in Missouri passed that. That is not acceptable, especially when you're putting something into the Constitution that limits the people and not the government. 16 total counties passed uh, recreational marijuana. That is too low of a threshold. And because of the population of those areas, they got a 50+1 majority vote, and it went through. The problem with Amendment 4 isn't they're trying to take the initiative petition away from the people. The problem with Amendment 4 is that it's setting one standard for the people, and the legislative body gets to keep the same standard. That's the problem. Yes, they're saying it has to win in every district. If it gets turned to, if 7 out of 8 districts pass it, but like let's say the St. Louis area says no, it doesn't go in. It's time to stop amending the Constitution anyway. These recreational marijuana should have been in the revised statutes of Missouri. You could make if they wanted to pass an abortion law, it should have been in the revised statutes. If they wanted things on bingo, should have been a revised statute. They didn't do that. Part of the problem is things like marijuana. The legislature should have passed a bill that said, hey, they knew there was enough outcry from people. They knew people wanted recreational and medical marijuana legalized in the state. That should have just went through the legislative body and passed it. They didn't. And so you get things like this. And then you have people who don't have enough knowledge on what the Constitution's supposed to do or the subject matter at hand. And then those things get put into the Constitution. And our Constitution keeps getting thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. It's 38, 39 pages for just marijuana alone. Now, you have that. And then the Republicans come out and go, see what happens, man? We have to pass Amendment 4. And it's the threat of outside of Missouri money influencing Missouri politics. And though, like with recreational marijuana, they weren't wrong. The problem is they're acting like every initiative petition put forth by the people is always out of state, and everything legislatively comes from the wisdom of the legislative body. And that is not the case either. The case there is they want to be treated one way and they want us to be treated a different way. And with this trust me, bro attitude, just kind of like Amendment 5, trust me, bro. So, yes, when Republicans do things like this and you get progressives pointing this out, showing people like, look what the Republicans are doing. And, it makes it easier for the progressives and those types of folks to have some kind of argument on why you should vote for them because they're going to protect this and they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And the people that are like the Jess Pipers of the world here, they're spouting this stuff and they don't even understand it, but they're celebrating these Democratic Socialists wins and the progressives like gaining traction. And these people themselves have shown to all of us that they don't even know what the hell they're talking about. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. So she says, I'm sick of it, and so are so many of the folks I speak on a regular basis. The problem is we keep electing Republicans who keep directing us down a bigger hole that is increasingly harder to get out of. After decades of defunding and dismantling, it's going to take a lot of time to get our state back in order, back in the business of taking care of our citizens. I'm going to pause there again. The Republicans did say they were going to cut $4 billion from the budget. And I don't know if that meant that they literally cut out the, like the budget was actually going to increase by $4 billion and it decided not to increase it, but they didn't cut any spending. So she's saying they're defunding all these things and we're digging a deeper hole. The fact is the Missouri budget is too large. It's too big. And so it's not that they're just cutting all this spending because they're not. I think it actually went up about $400 million anyway. So another lie from Jess Piper. But there is a problem separate from our Republican problem. There's an establishment Democrat problem as well. And it makes me a little uncomfortable to write on it. But I feel the need to say some things as a Democrat, but especially as a rural Democrat, a dirt road Democrat. I don't know what the hell that means. Rural spaces throughout the country were devastated in the first waves of the GOP takeover before Donald Trump and his ilk. We suffered under Republicanism, but also under the moderate Democrat leaders who tried to be as conservative as possible to win this red state. Rural ballots don't need a Republican light on the ballot when we always have a Republican on the ballot. In Missouri, we haven't seen progress in decades, but the regression is around every corner. And nothing will get better without the big ideas I am seeing in the new politicians across the country. I'm going to write something scary to some. The politicians I'm talking about are Democratic Socialists, and I'm supposed to be scared of them and their ideas. I am supposed to believe that I am in the big tent party while thinking progressives are too far left. I am supposed to link the term socialism to communism. I'm supposed to be repulsed by the very idea of socialism, even if the word democratic precedes it. I'm not. Can you imagine trying to scare me with the term democratic socialist while I live under a GOP supermajority that would literally sign my death warrant to force a pregnancy? They have defunded my daughter's schools. They have defunded our roads and healthcare and services. They silence our vote. They cheat and gerrymander. They have unapologetically imposed authoritarianism for 2 decades. I am not scared of Democrat socialism because I have lived under Republican dominated legislature for over 2 decades. I have nothing to fear from the word socialism, and here's some good Missouri common sense to prove it. Socialism. Now, that is the patented trademark of the special interest lobbies. Socialism is a scare word they have hurled at every advance that people have made in the last 20 years. Socialism, what they called public power. Socialism was what they called Social Security. Socialism was what they called farm price supports. Socialism was what they called bank deposit insurance. Socialism was what they called the growth of free and independent labor organizations. Socialism is their name for almost anything that helps all the people. Harry S. Truman. Now, Social Security is a kind of a socialist type policy. Um, Farm price supports is not a free market thing. That is a government led. Oh, we're going to make sure that when the government is intruding into some type of market and doing some type of price supports, that is not free market capitalism. That is not a Republican form of government. It is more of a socialist policy. So Harry S. Truman is wrong. Uh, Growth of free and independent labor organizations. And if you're naming something for almost anything that helps all the people, that's what the other side calls socialism. No, if government got out of the way and the people's lives improved, no one would call that socialism. You know what we'd call that? The way America's supposed to be. Because when government creates a policy that's supposed to help all the people, i.e., the Affordable Care Act, which what happened there? Oh, that's right. Most of the people, even working class people, saw their insurance premiums go up as well as their deductible. And if you want cheaper premiums, then your deductibles are sky high. Was that the free market at work, or was that government intervention into healthcare? And then you want to complain that you lost your insurance. Yeah, because government intervened, dummy. And so when government intervened into the health insurance in this nation, the amount of health insurance companies available to buy from in your state went down. Like Missouri, it went down to like two of them. The two biggest ones. The government that is supposed to be against creating against monopolies create monopolies all the time, because as much as Barack Obama liked to browbeat the CEOs of the insurance companies, guess who he invited into the White House or into the Congress to help write the Affordable Care Act? I don't know. I think it was the insurance companies. And the insurance companies made it to where when they wrote this legislation, they got to write off and they got to regulate out their competition. Now, if you wanted cheaper prices, I've said this a million times, all they had to do was write a law that said you could buy insurance from across state lines. But people like Jess Piper and people of her ilk wouldn't understand that if it hit them in the head. And they think that the government automatically, health insurance is a right, and that the government had to write this legislation because she's too busy kissing the butt of the Obama types of the world. Now, she's saying that there's too many moderate Democrats in Missouri. Go sit in the gallery when they were talking about gold and silver a few years ago. Listen, I bet she wasn't there when they were talking about that, because these same moderate Democrats brought up Civil War coins and Nazi gold and Trump coins. That doesn't sound like a moderate Democrat. That sounded like they were just trying to scare the bejesus out of anyone they could when it came to having gold and silver here as legal tender in the state of Missouri. So some of the things that she's putting in here. Now, is she wrong that Republicans in this state love their authoritarianism? Not completely. She's talking about her version of people being free or helped is all based in government intervention. And when they pulled the little trick and moved the vote up on the Medicaid expansion, um, that made the Missouri budget balloon up because that by law they have to Medicaid expansion passed, they have to fund it. Those funds are coming from some of that funding, or a lot of that funding is coming to the federal government. And again, these people base their decisions on um, the fact that the government's just always going to have all this money to spread out to states to pay for Medicaid. Or it's these people want Medicare for all. And where does this money coming from? It doesn't fall out of the sky. And then they say, "Well, take the wealth of the top people." So the government, if they could get all the money of like sell every building that these billionaires own, got all their stocks and sold them all, and got every bit of wealth that they own, it would be gone in 8 months. What happens after that? They don't have an answer for that. They just want you and people like Jess Piper and so many others who are fully embedded in government. Certain people in government don't know what they're doing, but these people know exactly how to fix things. But again, they never want to talk about what happens when other people's money runs out. And maybe they base their monetary decisions on what these new economists think, that there's no such thing as you can just print money, and the debt doesn't matter. Okay, so this isn't just New York politics either. There's a wave of progressivism across the country, and I see it when I speak in Missouri and Iowa and Kansas and Nebraska and Illinois. The movement is often referred to as prairie progressivism or prairie populism. It originates from the Spitfire Prairie progressives of the last century, the folks who led the way in workers' rights and advocated for public schools and fair trade for farmers and healthcare. Jesus. These folks often run as Democrats, but are deemed further left, though I'm not sure that definition fits anymore. The new left of center is pretty much just common sense these days. And that's what voters want: common sense and policies that work. It doesn't seem like it should be hard to convince Democrats that people want what the progressives are offering. When someone tells me to be afraid of democratic socialism, I have to wonder, afraid of what exactly? I've seen it work in the happiest countries across the globe and the biggest cities in the US. In the end, this isn't just a New York City movement. It's not a trend. It's not a phase. It's a movement of people across the country who are done being told to settle for less. It's people who have common sense, who know what common sense should mean something again, something that actually improves their lives, all of our lives. That's what this new wave of progressivism is tapping into, and we aren't scared. The Democratic Party should not be scared either. Progressives and Democratic Socialists belong under the big tent just as much as moderates. Progressivism is just a simple belief that the government should take care of its people. The people deserve it. And then we get below. You're absolutely correct on all this. I've had conversations with Democratic state reps and senators who just look and sound defeated because they can't accomplish anything significant. And the more our Republican leaders push right, I find myself leaning even further left. Thank you for this, Jess. I was appalled seeing progressive movement being compared to a Tea Party, and not from the right. It came from the Democratic officials. We will lose again if we don't get out of our own way. I could not agree with you more. I was very encouraged to see so many of Bernie Sanders' endorsees win in primaries. And I love what Harry Truman said about socialism. It takes the scare out of the word. We need to rebrand socialism as helping people. Now, if we could just get more people to move off the stance of never voting for a Democrat. Oh man. This is just unbelievable, dude. Um, Agorizer, you're not late. I started way late. I didn't start till 8 o'clock. So you are fine. But yeah, there we go. That's Jess Piper. She's really laying it out for you why you shouldn't be scared of progressivism, because progressivism is just the simple belief that the government should take care of its people. So now I know I'm not stating anything mind blowing here when I say this. It's just that she thinks the government's duty is to take care of its people. So she doesn't understand the basic foundation of our country, and that's clear from her writings. If you read them enough, you'll see right there that she has no clear understanding of government's actual role. Government's job originally, the way it should be, is that the government is to protect the rights of the people, not take care of them, not create a bunch of welfare programs and then steal money from one group of people and give it to another, and tax you for every single thing to keep it solvent. No, that's not government's intent. And that's the problem. But because of our education system, the publicly funded schools that she loves, because it'll teach your kids these things. They'll teach your kids that the government's there to take care of you. So, you know, but that's so there's that, right? And these people are like, see, we just need we just got to do get these progressives elected because their ideas win. You don't equate socialism with communism. Well, if government controls all these different things, hey, good evening, Dennis. If government controls all the things and they've got their hands in all this stuff and they are um, wanting control of everything and regulate everything, yeah, that is a little communist. I mean, look what, again, the history books are too kind to Stalin because he was our ally in World War II. And I think if we would talk about that a little more and say, yeah, he might have fought the Germans, even though he was aligned with them in the beginning, and he got angry when Germany invaded Russia. But do you know how many people he killed and what his policies did to that country? How much food he took from people because they overproduced, or he'd throw them in jail because they produced too much weed or they produced too much this. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about any of that. And Agorizer has a good point. I don't care what they would do for me. I worry about what they'll do to me. Yes, that's a very good point. So yeah, this is just one small example of people coming out and preemptively spiking the football because they don't think the Missouri budget should shrink. It could balloon up another 20 billion and you could give it all to education and watch it be an absolute you know what show, and not just be like, they're irresponsible people. That's all there is to it. They're irresponsible. Again, yeah, I believe the Missouri education budget shrunk by $190 million. But again, you can go onto several sites and see average scores and how well people are reading at eighth grade level and fifth grade level and high school level. See the underwhelming results, and then they're going to try to convince you that you just need to give them more money. Now, in a state the size of Missouri, where we don't have it's not heavily populated, that education budget's $8 or $9 billion out of a budget of almost $51 billion, which is reaching approximately the same size budget as the state of Illinois. That doesn't bother progressives. Again, you could double that to $100 billion, and they would probably think that's not enough money because there would still be failures there. And they would want to tell you, well, we just need more money. So they are not reputable and they are not to be believed. But yeah, that's just one thing that we're seeing. And that's from someone here in Missouri really hyped up about the progressive wins. Agorizer says shrinkage in the pool, bad. Shrinkage in the budget, good. Reminds me of that Seinfeld episode with George Costanza. It's shrinkage. Now, again, we talk about Republicans, we talk about Democrats. Republicans have doing in Congress, besides people like Thomas Massey, are generally not good. And they haven't been leading by example. They have not kept their campaign promises. This helps the left. Now, do I want to see a bunch of Democrats win? No, because they are awful as well. And they're slightly more awful than Republicans. Would I find it hilarious if the Republicans in the midterms which stayed home and just didn't vote because they didn't like what they were being offered? I would find that amusing. I'm not going to lie. But when we talk about Democrats, when we talk about Republicans and all these states, I want to play this video. Now, hold on. It's probably going to pop the audio up as soon as it decides, okay, it didn't actually do it. Congratulations. This is in Minnesota. This guy gets a little worked up talking about things. All I want you to do is hear the language that's being used, because this guy's he's not wrong. But it's also one of those things where you're like, how do people get past the language and get to actual actions of their elected officials, right? And I just want to play this because this is a little between the left and the right type of thing. Again, this guy's it's not that he's making bad points. Hold on. Did I share my page yet? I probably didn't. Nope, I didn't. So let me do that real quick. Share my page here. I'll blow this video up and we'll just hear this gentleman from Minnesota speak.
You're against gun violence. Give me a break. Virtually every gun mass shooting that's taken place in recent years has been a leftist. Annunciation was a trans activist who hated Christians. That's who it was.
Point of parliamentary inquiry.
Here we go.
This is unbelievably inappropriate. Both the tone, both the accusation. I don't even know if the member is sober, honestly.
I've talked to people. I've talked to constituents. This whole political back and forth. I know that we're bored, right? Like we're trying to figure out ways to use the time before Sunday to get in as many political jabs as we possibly can on both sides of the aisle, on the assumption that anybody outside of here cares. Trust me, they don't. They ain't paying attention. They don't care about our little squabbles. But what they do care about is their rights. What they do care about is life. And it's very interesting to me, the strategy between the two sides of the aisle. We bring up a couple of days ago a bill that you guys authored that's going to impose $35,000 worth of taxes on every single family in the state of Minnesota for no reason. It doesn't do anything, doesn't accomplish a damn thing other than completely depleting the capacity of Minnesotans to live. That's what it does. And you come back yesterday with, we'll get them. Well, I know what we should bring up. We should bring up that unborn life shouldn't be regarded as life. There's a consistency there. Your life isn't yours. If you don't qualify in our minds as a real person, we don't care about you. We can destroy you at will and call it bodily autonomy. And now this. And now this. Saying that my father-in-law, who has been a loving grandfather to all 4 of his grandchildren, my 2 nieces and my 2 sons, should go to prison unless he turns over his guns to you. It'll be a cold day in hell. A cold day in hell before that happens. One of the 2 men who stands between those children and the threats that you have fostered against me. And that leads me to my overriding point, which is, you guys like to talk about weapons of war. Weapons of war. Oh. Let's talk about the ideology of war. How about that? How about the ideas, the thoughts, the motivations that drive people to commit violent acts? 2024, Brooklyn, New York. Isaiah Brinsley shot and killed 2 NYPD officers, execution style, in the patrol car. He explicitly cited revenge for the police killings of Eric Garner and Michael Brown, posting anti-police messages tied to Black Lives Matter protests, classified as black nationalist anti-police extremism. July 7th, 2016, Dallas, Texas. Mikkel Xavier Johnson, a black nationalist with anti-white and anti-police views, ambushed and killed 5 police officers and wounded 9 others using a rifle during a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest against police brutality. He had expressed hatred for white officers. July 17th, 2016, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Gavin Eugene Long, a black nationalist and sovereign citizen, adherent motivated by anti-police grievances and recent officer-involved shootings of black men, ambushed and killed 3 police officers and wounded 3 others with a rifle. June 14th, 2017, Alexandria, Virginia. James Hodgkinson, a left-wing activist and Bernie Sanders supporter with strong anti-Republican and anti-Trump views, opened fire with a rifle and pistol on Republican lawmakers practicing for a congressional baseball game. He wounded 6, including Representative Steve Scalise, who was critically injured, before being killed by police. July 13th, 2019, Tacoma, Washington. William Van Spronson, an anarchist, Antifa supporter, attacked the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, F-ICE. You got those signs over there, don't you? In your office building, right over there? You can go look at them right now, right? Like, if you happen to be, I don't know, you listen to this, you happen to be a block away at the Centennial Office Building, you can snap a picture of these people saying F-ICE, which is the exact motivation of this person to kill with a firearm.
Mr. Speaker,
the ideology of
point
war.
of parliamentary
the
inquiry.
Ideology of war.
State your point of parliamentary
What item of
inquiry.
business are we on?
Well, I think we're on the suspension of the rules. Your member made the motion.
Okay, just checking.
Representative Hudson.
Thank you for confirming that I'm hitting a nerve, right? It's very obvious. Very obvious. And by the way, I'm not done. And because of the rules we have here, I get to go as long as I want. So buckle up. Right? Okay? August 29th, 2020, Portland, Oregon. Michael Reinhold, a self-described Antifa supporter, shot and killed Aaron Danielson during clashes amid protests. He was later killed by police. You know what? I'm going to spare you most of these. I really am. I mean, I could go on for hours, but I won't. How about these two? Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk shot through the throat on live television. My 12-year-old saw that. He knows who I am. He knows what I do. What do you think that does to his psychology? How do you think that helps him sleep at night? Especially when he sees how you and your leaders at the state and national level respond with glee and celebration and excuses. The ideology of war is what puts us at danger, not the weapons of war. My father-in-law has weapons of war. He takes pride in it. He's a historian, self-taught. He'll bore you to death with his knowledge of historical weapons. But you know what he's never done? He's never picked up one of those weapons in order to harm another human being. And you want to make him a felon. To hell with that. Never. It's never going to happen. And of course, just a few weeks ago, less than a month, depending on who you ask, a third or sixth attempt on the life of the President of the United States. And what did Cole Allen tell us in his manifesto that he so conveniently provided for us to review as to what his motivation was? Was it the guns that he was carrying that made him deadly? Or was it the ideology, the ideas, the things that you people say every day and repeat in the media, and that the media eagerly reposts, that informed his desire, his sense of moral conviction that he should become an assassin? His manifesto was coherent. It had moral reasoning and logic. The only thing it lacked was an accurate and righteous moral base. But it was entirely in tune with everything that we see from your side of the aisle on a daily basis, and filed in this hopper with your bills. Totally consistent. You're against gun violence. Give me a break. Virtually every gun mass shooting that's taken place in recent years has been a leftist. Annunciation was a trans activist who hated Christians.
All right, I'll just stop it there. Again, there's this left-right paradigm in what he's saying. He's not entirely wrong. The point I want to get out of that playing that audio is the fact that we have people on the left and the right, especially the establishment types, and even the Democratic Socialists, who use inflammatory language to get people riled up against another group of people. And this us versus them mentality, it's either class warfare, the haves not, the wealthy versus the poor. There's always, when these people get up and speak, they always speak about two groups of people. Now, I think there's two groups of people. And if you're going to talk about an us versus them mentality, an us versus them look at the political landscape or whatever, it's the people versus the government. That's the two groups of people that we should identify with. I think a lot more of us could get along and do some good if we stopped looking at just automatically the other side of the aisle and looking for politicians to fix things. If we could just say, most of us are pretty reasonable. We may not have all the knowledge about the founding of this country or the Constitution, But a lot of us want to be left alone. In general, we generally want to be left alone. And there's a whole group of people in buildings across this country who just won't leave us alone. You know, uh, that used to be on LRN, ran a bumper. It said there are those who just want to be left alone and those who just won't leave them alone. Which one are you? And it's like at the end of the day, you're going to have people who follow both sides of the political aisle at kind of the extreme ends that just cannot let go. It has to be the other people's fault. And they want to lord over people. I generally think, and maybe it's a false hope, that there are a lot of people who don't want to live that way. They just want to be left alone. They don't want to have to beg permission for everything. They just want to go to work. Yeah, Ernest Hancock. Thanks, Agorizer. They just want to be left alone. And as long as they're not hurting anyone else, who freaking cares what they're doing? It's the media in line with politicians who are enforcing this idea that there's always a boogeyman out there. It's China or it's George Soros or whoever out to get us, especially here in Missouri. It's George Soros. Right now, George Soros's name is coming up a lot with this Amendment 4 thing. And China. That's our two big enemies here in Missouri. China and George Soros. The majority of the politicians out there will give you a group of people. They will create a boogeyman, and they get a lot of people to focus on that boogeyman. The boogeyman that they should be focused on is a group of people who swear an oath to a document that they are supposed to uphold and defend it. It's called the Constitution, whether it's the federal Constitution or the U.S. Constitution or the state Constitution. They don't do either one. They don't defend or uphold either one. And then they want to have Amendment 4 and Amendment 5 and Amendment 3 on the ballot. And if you happen to disagree with them on social media, they want to say you're a leftist because you don't agree. You don't trust the people, generally, most of them that are in that building. You don't trust them to do the right thing. They haven't cut the budget. They haven't cut spending. They haven't done the things they say they're going to do. So they give you a boogeyman to look at instead of the actual people who are the problem. And as legislators in both chambers who ignore their oath to the Constitution, do not control themselves, and who seemingly want to lord over some of us, or the majority of us. That's what we get. And a lot of people need to realize that you and I, or they, are not generally the real problem. There is a problem there, and it's a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding on whose fault it is for things that have gone on. And we have given over the years, most of us were not born with a really liberty-oriented mind. Most of us went to school, we heard our parents maybe talk politics, and we kind of formed our opinions on that. And then maybe later in life, you're like, things are definitely not what I was told they were when I was younger. You were kind of rethink things, and you come to a different understanding. But it's just like we have to get to a point where it's like it's not necessarily left versus right. It's us versus a whole lot of people who seemingly want to enrich themselves at the cost of prosperity and peace of the American people. And they are against us. And people will say, no, they're not. Okay. If that's your opinion, you explain to me why they're hell-bent on getting this FISA thing done and getting it extended out. Why they want to expand the surveillance state, because clearly there are people in the halls of power who view us as the enemy. And if that is their view, we should no longer be thinking left versus right. It should be we the people versus wannabe tyrants. Not, oh, my neighbor's out there and his grass is too tall. I got to go to City Hall. That's not the problem. That's not our problem. If that's what you concern yourself with, you've got some problems. You want to be a tyrant. If that's what you concern yourself with because you think your property value might go down a little bit, pull your head out of your rectum and take a look around, because we got much bigger issues. Back to my point. If we're going to be in this thing, if we're going to be in a society, if we're going to have an institution that wants data centers everywhere, wants flock cameras everywhere, these cities want to work together to have this almost pre-crime thing they want to create. And it's all under the auspices of catching the criminals, right? It's not, well, we got to keep an eye on you guys. They always put the icing on it and says, hey, we're just trying to catch the pedophiles and the car thieves and all that. You don't need that many cameras. If you need that many cameras, that means everyone's car is getting stolen all the time. No, they are building a mass surveillance state. And if your city, your county, your state, your federal government is building this up, cameras facing everywhere, you have to, at some point, come to the realization that your government is spying on you. They don't trust you, or they want total control of you, because they know if you knew the real truth of what they did, there might be a revolt. You might have no interest in prolonging their power. That's what they're worried about. They're worried about the people coming to an understanding that they don't need the government as much as they think they do. That scares the pants off them. That's the understanding that the people have to come to, that the federal government and all its programs are not needed. If they stop stealing the wealth of the people, from the poor to the wealthy, let them have their money, shrink things down, deregulate, things will improve rather quickly. But if people see that, they go, huh, I guess we didn't need these douchebags all along. They can't have that. So what they're going to do is they're going to turn the power, the surveillance of what we got to make sure that no one's coming into the country to cause harm. All that power, all that technology is being turned inwards on the people. So that should tell you right there, it's not left versus right. It's not necessarily Republican versus Democrat. It's not this paradigm. It's not this box they want to put you in. You don't ever feel like you have to fit inside a certain political box. Don't feel like you have to prescribe to a certain ideology. You're an American citizen. You are supposed to be free. This is supposed to be a constitutional republic. It is not left versus right. It is not Democrat versus Republican. It's not conservative versus communist. It is the people versus the government. It is the people whose natural rights that are enumerated into the Constitution have to fight with a bunch of people who want you to believe that your rights stem from them and not are naturally occurring or come from your creator, whichever way you want to look at that there. And they're turning their power and their systems inward towards the people. So it's not political. Again, if we just have to get people to understand, it might be an us versus them, but it is not a two-party system fight. It is the people as a whole in all 50 states. versus 99% of those people are some kind of wannabe tyrant who just want to lord over you and they want to enrich themselves at your loss. And then they want to use some of the language. Now, going back to that video for a moment, that guy's not entirely wrong. The left has gotten really good at using some very inflammatory language, language that gets people worked up, and sometimes because people can't control their emotions well enough, think they have to go commit acts of violence against others because of they maybe lean a certain way. I'm not going to get into the Charlie Kirk thing because I don't think he was shot with a 30-06. I'll leave that alone for now. I'm going to disagree with him on that. But he's not wrong that there are politicians and media figures out there that will use a certain type of language that gets people fired up in order, and to a point, they will commit acts of violence against other people. That's what has to stop. Again, it is not left versus right. It is us versus them. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this evening's show. Thanks so much for tuning in and checking it out. And don't forget to be back here at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday night for another edition of the Missouri Liberty